Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anne Cavoukian, and I'm the Executive Director of the Privacy and Big Data Institute at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. I wish I could join you there live for your wonderful meeting of the World Jurist Association in Barcelona. I would love to be there with you, but this is the best we can do, but at least we can connect via video. And I'm going to talk to you about privacy by design today. And I always like to start by dispelling some myths, though, before anything else. I always like to tell people privacy is not about secrecy. It's not about having something to hide. No, it's about control. Privacy is all about personal control, having the ability for the user to control the uses of his or her data. Freedom of choice is critical, that you can decide how you want to have your information used. The Germans have a wonderful term for this called informational self-determination. Big term, simple concept. In fact, it was so important to them that they enshrined it as a right in their constitution in Germany in 1983. And it simply means that it should be the individual who determines the fate of his or her personal information. Because you see, context is key to how one's information should be used. And it's always the individual, the data subject, who possesses the context in which use of his or her data is appropriate. So it's absolutely critical. And I always like to tie privacy to freedom and liberty. You cannot have innovative, creative societies, prosperous societies, for which you need freedom and you need privacy. Privacy forms the foundation of our freedoms. You would not be able to have human rights, property rights, civil liberties, freedoms without privacy as the foundation, as the core. And the opposite of that is surveillance. Surveillance is the antithesis of privacy. One of the negative consequences of surveillance is what I call limited cognitive bandwidth. I'm a psychologist, so I use that language, that when you think you're constantly being watched, you're looking over your shoulder and you're not expanding, doing blue sky thinking, free and innovative ideas coming forth. No, you're doing the opposite. You're pulling in, you're drawing in, you're getting constrained. We don't want that. We want freedom, we want privacy, innovation, prosperity. Let me talk to you about privacy by design. I developed this a long time ago, but in 2010, it was unanimously passed as an international standard by the International Assembly of Privacy Commissioners and Data Protection Authorities. Once a year, we have a conference. I used to be a privacy commissioner for many years, and in 2010, I advanced a resolution to have privacy by design considered as an international standard. At the end of a 4-day conference, we have a half-day closed session where we vote on things. And to my delight, this resolution was unanimously passed by those in attendance. And I think the reason for it became very clear. I like to use this example of the iceberg. It became clear to commissioners and data protection authorities that we no longer had the capacity to prevent the privacy harms from arising. That in this day and age of ubiquitous computing, online connectivity, social media, connected devices, if we were seeing the tip of the iceberg as commissioners, we were lucky in terms of being able to address all the data breaches and privacy infractions. The majority of these were remaining largely unknown, unchallenged, undetected, unregulated. And that was no longer sufficient. So we felt that regulatory compliance alone was no longer sufficient in this future evolving world to protect privacy. It had to be complemented with a proactive means of protecting privacy through privacy by design. That regulatory compliance after the fact was simply unsustainable. So now we have the multiple measures, regulatory compliance and privacy by design, proactively that will hopefully minimize the privacy harms that will be arising. And to my delight, privacy by design has been translated into 38 languages, so it truly has a global presence. And you'll see Catalan there in number 37. So we're delighted with the massive adoption of privacy by design. I want to tell you one of the essential features of privacy by design framework. In addition to being proactive, it uses what I call a positive sum, not a zero-sum framework. Let me explain what I mean by that. Zero sum means that you can have an increase of one interest always to the detriment of another interest, such that the two total to a sum of zero. So I can have public safety versus privacy, always at a loss to privacy. Same with business interests versus privacy. In my world, that doesn't cut it. I don't want you to have more of one interest always at the expense of privacy. I want you to have both. Positive sum simply means you can have two increases, positive increases, and two functionalities at the same time. Privacy and security, privacy and business interests. You can have them both. And that's what's critical. And believe me, I've tested this with many engineers and software designers and business leaders. The people in the tech community told me that it's a false dichotomy to say that it has to be privacy versus security. Not so. It involves unnecessary trade-offs that we can just get rid of. It's as simple as replacing versus, privacy versus security, with privacy and security. How do you do both? I call it the power of and. And I can show you how many times we've done this in a moment. Now let me just run through the 7 foundational principles of privacy by design for you. So you'll see that these principles are intended to form the foundation, the base of the program. And it can take 100 different forms as long as these are at the base. I've talked about privacy being proactive and preventing the privacy harms from arising, much like a medical model of prevention. Privacy embedded as the default setting is probably the most important and the most difficult, but it just increases the privacy strength dramatically. It's a model of positive consent and embedding privacy automatically into your program and into your functionality. You don't expect the consumer or the citizen to work his way through the terms of service and the lengthy privacy policy to find the opt-out box that says, I don't want you to use my information for any other purpose. No, you can give privacy assurance from the beginning. You tell your customers, you tell citizens, we offer you privacy assurance. We've built it into the system as the default setting, meaning you don't have to ask for it. It's there. We will only use your information for the intended purpose that we identified to you, and if we want to use it for a secondary use later on, we'll come back to you and seek your positive consent. That's what privacy as the default means. It is one of the strongest forms of privacy protection. Embedded in design is critical because if you bake it into the code, embed it into your business practices, then you have a far greater likelihood of actually having it become real. It becomes a part of the system, and it's absolutely critical. It can't be an afterthought that you bolt on after the fact. No, it has to be part of the entire system. I've talked already about positive sum versus zero sum. The only thing I can tell you is in our existing society, zero-sum views of the world are so prevalent. Everyone thinks, well, of course we want privacy, but if we have to give up privacy to get public safety, then so be it. We have to do that. No, you don't. But it's that strong a prevailing view. You can have privacy and public safety. You can have both. You've got to be smart about it and innovate and think about it from the beginning. And I'll give you examples of how we've done that. Let me speak about security for a moment. The term privacy subsumes a much broader set of protections than security alone. But if you don't have strong security end-to-end with full lifecycle protection, you will never have good privacy. In this day and age of cyber attacks and phishing expeditions and so many attacks on security, you have to have a very strong base of security. It's absolutely essential. Visibility and transparency is so important. You have to keep what you're doing open to the data subject, to the citizen, the consumer, whoever's data is involved. I always tell companies and governments, you may be collecting somebody's data, but it doesn't belong to you. You only have custody and control of that data. It belongs to the data subject. So you are obligated to be open with them and let them know what you're doing with their information. It's their information, it's not yours. And respect for user privacy, I could have started with that. When you keep it focused on the user, user-centric, the rest falls into place. And you will gain a competitive advantage by doing this if you're a business. And you will gain the thanks of your citizens if you're a government for offering them this kind of privacy assurance. This is it. 7 foundational principles. You can build upon this in 100 different ways. And I want you to know it's real. This is a paper we did before I left the commission to show that we have operationalized privacy by design in all of these different areas because we wanted to show this is real. And we partnered with all the major companies in the tech world to produce these. IBM, Intel, Microsoft, HP, Oracle, I'm leaving out a whole bunch. We partnered with all of them to show how eminently doable it was to embed privacy into design of various technologies. Because we wanted to show people this is real, it works on the ground now, it's not just a theoretical construct. It has to be able to work now, and it does. And it does so in a way that benefits all of these companies offering it. And I want to show you the cost, because sometimes people say, well, what's it going to cost me? I mean, it's going to cost me a lot, right? Wrong. Yes, it's going to cost you something, but the cost of doing it proactively, embedding privacy proactively into design, is a fraction of the cost I guarantee you will incur when you have a data breach or a privacy infraction. In this day and age, the costs are no longer just lawsuits when you have that. They're class action lawsuits in North America. They cost a fortune. But perhaps even worse than that is the damage to your brand and the damage to your reputation that results from a data breach. It may be irreparable. And then there's also the loss of consumer confidence and trust. Your customers may leave, never to come back. You may not be able to recover from a data breach. That's how strong the costs are. So get smart. Put in a small investment up front and avoid these staggering costs after the fact. I want to give you one example. Japan was an early adopter of privacy by design, and the Japan Information Processing Development Center, JIPDEC, sent me this letter just before I stopped being commissioner. And I just wanted to share it with you because it shows how the people in the JIPDEC, the Japanese Information Processing Development Center, they wanted to tell me that they're following privacy by design, positive sum, not zero sum, and they said they've become enlightened with privacy by design. So I thought that was just so amazing that I wanted to share it with you. I've received many emails of this nature, but this is one of my favorites. People actually do this and they benefit from it. So let me tell you a few recent developments. This is in the United States. Pew Research did an internet project, and this is after Edward Snowden's revelation, so I think this was done in early 2015. And what they found was 91% of the adults that they surveyed, consumers, agreed that they had lost control over their personal information. I've never seen figures that high, 91%. And if you recall at the beginning, I said privacy was all about control. If 91% of the population in the United States feels they've lost control over their personal information, that's staggering in terms of enormous concern relating to surveillance by both government and business. And it just continued. Only 5% had heard nothing about government surveillance, and that's a very, very small percentage. And in Canada, of similar findings at the end of 2014, 90% of Canadians were concerned about the protection of their privacy. Again, that's a staggering number. I've never seen percentiles in the 90 percentile, and I've been doing this for over 20 years. So it shows you that ever since Edward Snowden's revelations, the public is very concerned. They are totally aware of the importance of privacy and are very, very upset about losing control. Also, another set of findings relating to data breaches. Data breaches are a fact of life in the United States now. They call it an epidemic of data breaches. Some people said last year was a pandemic of data breaches. And the cost per record, per individual, is in the United States $201 US. It's staggering because usually these data breaches have thousands, sometimes millions of records in them. So these costs are staggering. The best way to address data breach, privacy breaches, privacy infractions is by embedding privacy into design. And going to Europe, the European Article 29 Working Party in the EU, they are a big proponent of privacy by design. When we think of the Internet of Things, some people call it the Internet of Everything, the EU Article 29 Working Party said you have to make privacy the default setting. That's the second foundational principle of PBD. And they also said follow privacy by design. We have to get in front of this, because if we don't embed privacy into the development of the Internet of Things, into the design, we're not going to be able to get the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. We won't be able to control the massive uses that will proliferate. And likewise, at the Privacy Commissioners Conference, they said that with respect to the Internet of Things, privacy by design should be the key selling point of innovative technologies. And the reason I love that language is because I always say, don't think of privacy as an impediment to business. Think of it as a positive. Privacy and business. Privacy by design can give you a competitive advantage over the other guys because you're embedding it, and it will appeal enormously to your customers. It will allow you to retain the customers you have and attract new ones. Think of it as a plus to creativity and innovation. Now, as you know, last year, the US-EU Safe Harbor Agreement was invalidated. And the invalidation of Safe Harbor was huge to US companies. About 4,500 US companies all of a sudden are at a loss. What are we going to do? We don't have anything to replace it. And as you know, the EU-US Privacy Shield has been developed since then to replace Safe Harbor, but it's questionable whether it's going to be accepted by the Article 29 Working Party. There's been a lot of disagreement. So it's not a slam dunk, if you will. Stay tuned on what direction it goes in, but certainly Safe Harbor is gone. As you also know, there's a new law coming into the EU called the General Data Protection Regulation. This GDPR will be replacing the 28 separate privacy laws of the 28 member countries of the EU. And for the first time, you'll have one overarching law that will apply to all. And it's being adopted as we speak in the spring of 2016. And this is going to have major implications. Now, one of them is that the GDPR, for the first time ever, has the language of privacy by design, data protection by design, and privacy as the default, actually in the statute. So this is a first, and it's very exciting, obviously, for me. But it shows that the EU is taking privacy very seriously, and they're raising the bar, making it more proactive, as well as developing a new law that is extremely strong and privacy protective. So for the first time, you're going to have privacy by design reflected in the EU GDPR in sections 23 and elsewhere. This has led some people, not myself, but Information Age, a publication in the United States, they wrote this article. I couldn't help but include it in a slide, and they said, and I quote, "It's not too much of a stretch to say that if you implement privacy by design, you've mastered the GDPR." Wow, I didn't say that, but this is the reflection that people are saying, if you follow privacy by design until we have a new Safe Harbor agreement or Privacy Shield or something that's in place, then you'll get a leg up on being able to follow the GDPR. So it's something you may wish to consider in terms of being proactive about adopting privacy by design. Not only because it will give you a leg ahead of the others, it'll give you a competitive advantage as a business, as a government. You'll be able to offer much stronger privacy protections to your citizens and be able to offer greater protection against surveillance, which is the antithesis of privacy and freedom. So let me end, ladies and gentlemen, by asking you to consider privacy by design proactively embedded into the design of your information technologies, your operational processes, your business practices, and focus on preventing the privacy harms and data breaches from arising. The cost will be a fraction to having to incur those data breaches, and it will make your life much easier, as well as the life of citizens and consumers. If you can banish zero-sum thinking, I would be ever so grateful, because it's not an either-or proposition. It shouldn't be win-lose. It should be win-win. And you can do this by offering privacy and public safety, privacy and functionality. You can do both. As I've said, take a look at our paper on operationalizing privacy by design. We have countless papers in there that show how you can do this with a variety of technologies. And with artificial intelligence and machine learning coming in the future, the sky's the limit as to what we can do. So I urge you to I always say get smart, lead with privacy by design. Otherwise, you might just get privacy by chance if you're lucky, but more often than not, you'll end up getting privacy by disaster when you do have a data breach, and then the regulator is going to be knocking on your door, and that's the last thing you want. So consider privacy by design, and if I can be of any assistance to you, please email me. I always respond. I would want to offer my assistance in advancing the adoption of privacy by design. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.